Hello, glad you can join us. As new digital tools and virtual environments emerge and grow, so does the related risk. In this episode, we'll discuss the upside and risks of extended reality and the metaverse, generative AI, plus crypto controversy. Stay tuned.
The Institute of Internal Auditors presents All Things Internal Audit.
The promise of extended reality is fueling predictions for previously unimagined possibilities within the fast-emerging metaverse. As organizations explore and adopt ways to embed these technologies into their business models, internal audit must move quickly to identify and help respond to related risks and support management of this emerging technology. Leaders from KPMG and Meta recently shared some insights on what lies ahead.
We just finished a conversation on the Metaverse. It was awesome. Hundreds of people online in the room, talking, thinking, challenging us. Some are believers, some are not. So we're going to do a little bit of a kind of we did in there to highlight what is it, what are the risks, what are we doing in our profession. So Stephanie, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah.
What is it?
The metaverse can't really be described in one word. It's actually a compilation of many different technologies coming together. So that is AR, VR, virtual reality. There's Gen AI, machine learning, and Web3, blockchain. So it's all of those things together to create an experience that is very immersive, that converges kind of your experience in the physical world with the digital world.
Right. So Brajesh, you're living it. You work for Meta. You are an internal audit. So what does it mean from your vantage point?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically everything that Stephanie said, because it's a digital embodiment of your physical life. And it's going to take a little bit of doing because it's all of those technologies put together. Each one of them is at a different stage of maturity, and all of them are going to continue to evolve as we speak. And once they come together, you'll have that romanticized version of the metaverse at your disposal.
Right. So with any new emerging technology, there's risk and there's opportunity. Let's talk about opportunities. What does this mean opportunity-wise for the market, Stephanie? What does it mean? What are we doing?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on. It really started out in gaming. So a lot of people started playing their own games, creating their games, exchanging assets and selling them. And it sort of bled into consumer and retail. So a lot of the brands were getting into this space, selling and transacting and creating a community around it. But it also has a commercial and enterprise implications as well as we move into more, facilitating trainings and meeting in the metaverse to creating digital twins to improve efficiencies in a process and things like that. So it kind of goes all across the board because it's a digital experience that you and I are living day to day in a personal way and at a professional level.
Right. Yeah. So Matt, you're a tech risk leader. A lot of the audience clearly is internal auditors. Yeah. What are the top audits that people should be thinking about in the next couple of years?
I mean, Brajesh kind of mentioned that. I think as you look at how your company is adopting and entering the metaverse, it's privacy. It's what data are we capturing from the users? How are we leveraging the data? And then how are we sharing the data itself? And then also integrity from a identity perspective. How do we know that we are interacting with the person we think we are interacting with? And so I would say those are probably the top two. We think about privacy and security are going to be top of mind when you think about the metaverse itself.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about clearly the risks and the opportunities it creates. We have to respond. You made some great points about collaborating with the business to kind of be a guide. We all want to trust this new technology, but it doesn't come without opportunity to kind of weigh in on that. So likewise for our own function, internal audit using the technology. We talked a little about the ideas. Brajesh, maybe you can dig in a little bit on this. If we use the metaverse for the execution of internal audit, what might that look like in the future?
Yeah, and I think we're definitely moving in that direction. For now, it's a great space to collaborate. It's a great space to conduct walkthroughs or meet with your stakeholders and have a much more detailed discussion. And even to have like whiteboarding sessions about how you plan to test certain aspects. And if your company is into the metaverse, if it's your product, it's a great way to like experience the actual product and test it out live, as opposed to like relying on certain data points at the back end to test certain things.
Yeah. Well, Stephanie, with your broad background outside of internal, any closing thoughts for our audience watching online to how they should be thinking about this?
Yeah, I mean, as a personal enthusiast, I want everybody to really experience it for themselves. There are many different things, whether you want to get into a game or you want to start experiencing these collaborative spaces, I would say do it and really start to embrace it and understand it. And then you can figure out and start connecting the dots on how you can actually work with the business.
Yeah. I love it. Any other closing thoughts you guys want to make?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, from an internal audit perspective, what is internal audit's role in the adoption of the metaverse? One of the things we did speak about is, what can internal audit do? And it's part of the risk assessment process, understanding if, when, how the business is going to adopt the metaverse. Second, it's really going to be brokering the conversations, right? If it's a privacy conversation, ask the questions about privacy and bringing the right people to the table. Same thing with security, health and safety, et cetera. So really having internal audit be a conduit to other parts of the business and asking the questions about risk and making sure that the governance process is existent as the metaverse is more broadly adopted and used by the business.
Yeah, I love it. So digital transformations here. This is one technology suite or ecosystem, maybe it's better said, that we're using, companies are using. Get involved, have the conversations. It's really important. If you want to learn more, we have a thought leadership piece coming out at the conference today that everybody's contributed to, kind of learn a little bit more, get exposed to it. Go buy a VR headset, buy one for your kid, use it on the side, have a good time. So thanks for being here. It was a great panel. Appreciate it.
How can internal auditors help untangle the risks of AI and cybersecurity? Find out in the August 2023 issue of Internal Auditor magazine. Look for a link in the comments or show notes.
Everybody's talking about ChatGPT, the generative artificial intelligence application that does everything from drafting resumes to providing relationship advice. Generative AI is a huge leap in AI's capabilities and puts the technology into the hands of everyone. It's also poised to transform businesses with its virtually unlimited applications. But as the technology takes the world by storm, organizations must determine how they will use and govern generative AI. Joining me today are Srikar Krishna, Principal U.S. National Leader for Artificial Intelligence at KPMG, and Charles King, Managing Director in KPMG's Internal Audit and Enterprise Risk Practice. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
Generative AI is taking the world by storm. Can you first explain what it is? What sort of business applications is it creating?
When we think about AI, and it's not a new thing, everybody has heard the word artificial intelligence for a while now. What will be interesting for viewers to hear is that the generative AI is a new wave of AI where we are really talking about content being produced brand new from AI, whereas previously we had been using it for making interpretations out of the data. We were using it mostly as a decision support, but now we are actually starting to use generative AI to create new content that is brand new, that has not been seen by humans before. And the methodologies that we had used in the past have evolved to give us this new technology or this new methodology. It's not something that is out of the blue, but it is an evolution of what we had seen before as AI.
So how can internal auditors use generative AI in their work?
I think there are a number of ways that internal audit can use generative AI. I think some of the first uses that internal auditors have used are things like doing research, understanding processes, understanding industries. Generative AI is generalized, right? So it's very good at understanding a little bit about a lot of things. Obviously, we'll talk about risks a bit more, I'm sure, but you can't fully rely on factual output from generative AI. But you can get a good, B minus answer to a lot of questions. And for scoping an audit or the beginning of kind of researching around risk assessments and things like that, sometimes that just helps you have a better discussion with your team and with your stakeholders about the things that you're auditing. But additionally, generative AI has been surprisingly good at doing a lot of typical audit tasks, like coming up with a first draft of a scope memo or coming up with a first draft of audit test plans. I recently asked one of the generative AI solutions that we've deployed internally here at KPMG to show me what are the payroll process risks that I should be concerned about. And it had a great answer, and it only took about 5 seconds to come up with that answer. And even asking things like, what controls would I expect to be associated with those risks? And how would I go about testing those controls? Again, the answer required some tweaking to get it to a point where it was usable by our team, but the initial output was actually really, really good.
What risks are involved with generative AI, and how can organizations address them?
today, the generative AI models that are out there, they were trained a lot on open source data. And this brings an interesting risk to the end user, which is the data that is generated from there, who has the ownership? Because the open source data that was sourced in order to build the models, the use of data may not have been rightfully licensed, and that then brings up a question: how do we use the outputs that are generated by these models, and who has the ownership to the outputs that are generated by these models? And clearly, this is something that the industry is starting to take a look at, and we may see certain models that will come out with fully licensed data, and that may provide some of the answers. But the risks start to kind of become exponentially higher from there on. Think about hallucination, which is actually a very fancy term for these generative AI models producing terminologies that no longer are relevant to the question or the conversation that we are having. And the main reason that happens is because generative AI models are not like the human way of generating knowledge, where we start with a hypothesis and then we narrow down from hypothesis, and then we have argumentative statements, and then we elaborate on statements with examples and research. The way generative AI models work is they are a statistical machine that is looking at the bunch of words that have been offered to them, and it predicts what should the next word be and what the next word to that be. So in a sense, it is producing statistically relevant and important words as it produces the answer, which means that it sometimes can skip over the truth and produce words that fit into the paradigm of a statistical learning, but does not really represent the truth of the matter that is behind it. And what is very interesting is the conviction with which the outputs are generated now makes it hard to even test the truth of the matter, especially in areas where there is no black or white answer.
So for organizations and auditors, what's the best way to get started in using generative AI?
One of the first things that I tell anyone who wants to talk about generative AI is you need to establish and communicate a policy to your organization about what the rules of the road are with respect to generative AI. Right? For all of the reasons that we've talked about before, the IP issues, I think, are a big one. The hallucinations are another reason. I don't think the right answer is generative AI is off limits, don't use it. But education about the risks and opportunities of generative AI can go a long way to make sure that people are using it responsibly and using it in a way that's going to be helpful to your overall corporate mission.
Charles and Srikar, thank you very much for sharing your insights and your time today.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's our pleasure.
The Financial Services Exchange in Washington, D.C. on September 11th and 12th affords auditors in banking, credit unions, insurance, asset management, and more the opportunity to network, discuss key issues with policymakers, and gain unprecedented access to industry insights. To register, go to www.theIIA.org/FSE. And now for a bit of challenging fun we call In Focus. Generative AI's potential has become widely recognized. The question, by percentage, how soon will surveyed enterprises implement their first generative AI solution? Within the next 6 months? Within the next year? Within the next 2 years? Within the next 5 years? Which percentage has already implemented at least one generative AI solution? Which percentage has no specific time frame? We'll be back with the answer very soon. As with many new and rapidly evolving industries, cryptocurrency has experienced its fair share of scandals and fraud. Harold Silverman, Senior Director, CAE and Corporate Governance Engagement for the IIA, and Dana Lawrence, Director of Fintech Compliance at Pacific West Bank, had a conversation recently about navigating the risks and opportunities of crypto.
Dana, your presentation is about crypto hacks, scandals, and headlines. Why is this topic so important to our audit community?
I think this is an important topic because cryptocurrency is an emerging technology. Whether you like it or not, it's happening. And I think it's important for us to understand the fundamentals to be able to have informed conversations on the risks and benefits. And in this session, we're going to talk a little bit about the rise and fall of FTX, and really from the perspective of learning lessons and how we can embed governance in internal audit best practices in emerging technology.
Great. So tell me, why is this topic important to you personally?
Well, I started my career in the early 2000s when we were going through the housing boom. I worked in the mortgage industry, and I saw a lot of interesting practices. I'll say it was my very first job out of college, and did a lot of mortgages. And then as the housing market started to crash, I moved on to the internal audit side, and I saw the troubled debt restructuring, the foreclosures, other real estate owned, a lot of negative impacts due to the economic downfall nationally, globally, and then also right in my community. And I think that really stuck with me. So as the market rebounded, the economy got better, I started working for tech companies and a lot of financial technology startups. And that stuck with me, the importance of good governance. It's more to me than simply showing up and, doing your tick marks and doing your reports. Auditing, compliance, and risk management really is about creating safe and sustainable systems in our communities and businesses. So it's the field means a lot to me.
So can you tell me, what are some of the tips you'd have for leaning into emerging technology?
Sure. I would say don't overthink it. Anything is learnable. The most complex things we absolutely are capable of learning. And that can be done through going to meetups, reading blogs. The IAA is constantly pushing out thought leadership, chatting with peers and professionals at conferences. And then the second point would be leaning on the fundamentals. So I really think that just a good risk assessment is a great thing to bring with you, even if you're dealing with an emerging technology that really is no roadmap. If you can go through the process of mapping out the processes and the risks and sit down with those engineers, those data scientists, you really can figure out what your top risk areas are and go from there.
Excellent. So can you share like 3 things internal auditors should know about digital assets like cryptocurrency?
The first thing would be definitely do your due diligence. And again, this is not investment advice, but definitely do your due diligence if you are interested in purchasing or selling a cryptocurrency, understanding kind of the premise of what that product is, and understanding how it's secured, if you are in custody of the wallet or if you are allowing that to be custodied at a vendor. Another thing I think people should know about cryptocurrency is crypto companies have various degrees of maturity from a compliance perspective. Some of them are actually regulated. So for instance, in the US, some crypto-related firms are considered money service businesses and subject to anti-money laundering requirements of FinCEN. So that's definitely something to pay attention to. And then another fun, I think it's fun because we're all auditors here. So
fun for us.
Yeah, the transparency of transactions on the blockchain is pretty fascinating. We could pull up a phone or laptop right now and go to blockchain.com, for example, and we could look at how Bitcoin has moved throughout the history of Bitcoin. So we could pull up a malware ransom payment and look and see when that transaction was made and where it went. The reason why we can't necessarily identify who owns that wallet is because that piece is anonymous. But it's just fascinating what you can see on the blockchain.
Well, Dana, thank you so much for your time today.
Awesome. Thank you, Harold.
Now here's the answer to our In Focus challenge, which was, by percentage, how soon will surveyed enterprises implement their first generative AI solution? 12% will do so in the next 6 months, 26% within the next year, 33% within the next 2 years, 12% within the next 5 years, 9% have already implemented at least one generative AI solution, 7% have no specific time frame. Thank you for joining us. Be sure to like, subscribe, leave comments, or a rating. If you'd like to enjoy an extended version of the discussions featured today, visit the IIA.org, where IIA members get access to a longer version of this episode with bonus information and insights on the metaverse and cryptocurrency.
Seeking IT auditors. Explore the more focused path to certification with the CIA Challenge exam, a one-part CIA exam for active CISA holders, an exclusive opportunity that saves time and money. Expand your value with our value. The program application and registration fees are included. Plus, you get a customized CIA learning system, including 1,000 practice questions. Join the global family of 185,000 plus awarded CIAs.
Thanks for joining us for All Things Internal Audit from the IIA. We'll connect again soon.